Yes, indeed, folks, you do suck, but it's okay, because we have the snake oil to cure your ills. It's Just Plain Better. It's going up on Monday. It's the pilot show, so I expect you all to be there and show some support for our new host, Natural20. It's going to be doing a great job, going to be bringing you the numbers, bringing you the logic, the rationale, and some entertainment to go along with it. I expect to listen and learn about classes that I don't care about. It'll be great, so I can learn how to criticize other people more effectively. I'm not sure that's really what it was for, but, it'll do. Right. It's the second of last segment of the show, where we tend to get a bit more laid back and go a bit more general. And those concerned that the stream dropped earlier, yes it did, but we didn't lose any of the archive material. If you're listening to the podcast, well, you probably want to notice, other than the fact that I'm telling you right now, that yes, the live stream did fall over itself for no apparent reason today. Oh well, never mind. Now, I recently got into a game that some of you may be familiar with. Now, I'm taking my break from WoW, my hiatus, as it were. My sabbatical, that's what I'm calling it. And at the moment, I am participating in a beta, which is it's not so much of an open beta, but it's not NDA. It goes by the name Dungeons & Dragons Online Eberron Unlimited. Now, I like trying out new MMOs, if only to discover why I hate them. And I've been very good at doing such a thing. I played EVE Online for a little while and then realised that actually I hadn't really been playing it. I'd just been sitting around in Empire getting skills. I was like, well, what the hell am I doing? So I dropped myself. I played WoW for a little while until I realised, oh, it's got WoW-style levelling and I don't like that. So I stopped levelling and stopped playing. And it certainly wouldn't be the first game and no doubt wouldn't be the last. However, I've noticed the DDO has actually got me enthralled in a way that other games have not managed to do, and I would like to spend the next 13 or so minutes explaining why that is, and how World of Warcraft could perhaps learn from that. So this is what I realised over the course of 4 years playing WoW. This is something I should have known before I even started. When it comes to RPGs, I like two things. No, that's not true. I like three things. I like going into dungeons, I like killing big dragons, and I like getting big swords from big dragons in dungeons. That's it. That is what I like to do in RPGs. I.e., I like the dungeon crawling, I like the boss fighting, and I like the loot. Yeah, that's what I like doing. And anything that allows me to do that will have my attention at least for a while. Now, I suppose this really goes back to some of the first games that I ever really played in the RPG genre. In fact, perhaps the first game I ever played in the RPG genre, which was Angband. Angband is a roguelike game. You may be familiar with the term roguelike. Roguelikes don't have any graphics. They have a tile set based around ASCII 2 characters, meaning that, yes, your hero is an @ sign, and you are fighting giant uppercase V's and all sorts of things like that. A lot of imagination involved in those kind of games. And that's fine. That's cool. Because you can deal with that, because it allows you to fight bosses and get loot, and crawl dungeons, and that's why I like it, and indeed, occasionally still play Sangband, one of the variants, to this very day. It's that good. I'd recommend that everyone try a roguelike at least once. Sangband is a good bet. Zangband isn't, because it'll kick your ass. NetHack, always a good idea. The original flavour of Angband or Umoria. Anything like that, go try out a roguelike, and you'll see the yesteryear of RPG dungeon crawling and why it is appealing. Now, D&D, of course, is the granddaddy of dungeon crawling. It pretty much invented it. And D&D has spawned a number of games, some of which are better than others. I recall very much enjoying Icewind Dale. Not so much a case of enjoying Baldur's Gate. I don't know what it was. I think it was just the way that Icewind Dale was set up, in the sense of where it was, and the location was really cool, and the monsters were awesome, and the storyline was good. I was also never really a fan of Neverwinter Nights. It was a little bit too much D&D for my liking, and I never really got into it. But I was a big fan of Icewind Dale, and I have played D&D to the fact where I have, in fact, one of the original D&D board games. It was like an introduction to D&D, and it was called D&D Dragon Flame, or Dragon Fire, or something like that. I don't know what it was called. But it was good one way or the other. I had a lot of fun with that. And I did play other pen and papers after that, but D&D just stick in my mind as a good time. Now, when D&D Online came out, I must say I was not all that enthralled, because the problem with D&D is the setting was very generic. And therefore, I was not really getting into it. Funnily enough, and this is a little bit of ancient station history for you, an ex-staff member by the name of Leto and a couple of others, as I recall, we're going to start an offshoot of WoW Radio called Stormreach Radio, and this was part of our expansion plan, which never really got off the ground a couple of years ago. And we were going to start a small DDO station, and some of our staff were going to go over there. But they went and played DDO and found out that DDO did not have enough content to justify it, thereby said, no, it ain't going to happen. So, no DDO podcasts, no DDO shows ever happen. And this has happened with a number of different games. We were going to do the same thing with Warhammer, and it didn't hold our interest for long enough. But I got back into DDO as a result of the fact that it's going free in a couple of weeks, and I got into the closed beta and I tried it out. Now, here's what I liked about it. There's a couple of things about DDO that leave WoW in the dust. And these what should be kind of obvious to you. The first thing is the fact that it's full of dungeons. Like, it's a giant sack of dungeons. Basically, everything is a dungeon, with the exception of some of the wider open area quests in the larger roaming zones, which I might add are instanced. Everything is in a dungeon. Even these wider open zones are full of freaking dungeons all over the place. Dungeons upon dungeons. I love dungeons. And I love loot. And I love bosses. And every single instance in DDO has that. And they're all over the place. Even the tiniest quest is probably in its own dungeon. And it's got loot. And it's got kobolds and boxes to blow up. And bosses to fight. And puzzles. And the GM narrator, which is an amazing idea, because it's really immersive. Yeah, they've got a pre-canned set of GM narrations. You know how the GM goes, like, you enter a corridor, it is cold. You sense something in the distance, blah, 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 you hear this. And it keeps you going through the quest and narrates part of the quest for you. And some of it's a little bit obvious, but some of it also gives clues as to what to do next. And the objectives, generally speaking, are always not so convoluted, but multi-staged. As in, you can go to here and do this, then you follow up with this and this, and you invariably fight a boss at the end and get a treasure chest with something cool in it. It takes what WoW did with questing and takes it to the natural next level. It is to some degree the same. Here's the thing, WoW was great because it had a quest and it gave you a little treat at the end of it. Now, DDO does the same thing, but it gives you a mini instance, a dungeon. And you can do it on multiple difficulty levels. Not all of them, but most of them have multiple difficulty levels, some of which are designed for more advanced characters and some of which are designed for groups. And of course, the level of the loot and the mobs that you fight and stuff increases as you go through. So there's a lot of play there. Now, in WoW, I love the dungeons, yeah? The instances in WoW are the best things. Raiding is the best thing. Running instances is just awesome. The fact that DDO is basically nothing but that is great. Now, what it also has is a more involved combat system that WoW does not have. Yeah? As in, it's got collision detection. That's a good start. Which means that, as a tank, you can obstruct enemies from getting to your more vulnerable group members. You can actually physically block. You can physically dodge. And there are a myriad of traps and things that you will want to do that on. Now, the combat is actually dice roll based. It rolls a d20 and it shows you on the screen every time you swing. But your swing, you've actually got to swing your sword, or whatever, or cast your spell, and aim it. And if you don't, then it's not going to hit in the first place. And the problem that I've got with WoW is that it's a lock-on based combat system that is basically totally uninvolved. Yet you're utterly detached from it. You're bashing the keys, and it's like fireball, 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 fireball. And whether or not it hits or misses is based entirely on your resist chances and stuff like that. It's not involved. It's going through the motions, whereas if I'm a mage or a wizard or a sorcerer in DDO, then I'm throwing spells. Literally, I'm throwing spells, and I've got to aim them, and I've got to see if they hit or not. And yes, there are dice rolls involved, but the fact that I have to aim actually gets me more involved with the combat. It makes the combat more visceral, it makes it more enjoyable. It grips me more. It has a greater sense of immersion. Now, WoW, because of all of its big open spaces, is actually handicapped in that respect. There are a number of games whereby you have instanced content. There's a lot of instanced content in, say, City of Heroes. There's a lot of instanced content in Guild Wars. Yeah? But I think DDO does it best because it understands that what has made some of these games, including WoW, possibly at the forefront of it, really successful, is the ability to go into dungeons and do cool stuff. And the end game is based on dungeons, and you have dungeons breaking up the monotony of questing. Sorry if I'm sort of falling apart on air here. I'm suffering the last dregs of this stupid disease. We will survive. We will finish the damn show. And yes, it does break up the monotony of the questing. That's a good thing. Because the questing is probably the best way to disguise the grind, but if you put all the questing in the dungeons, then that's even better. I mean, you have people that go out of their way to not do questing outside of dungeons in WoW. It happens. Not only because dungeon crawling is actually extremely efficient, but it rewards you with great gear, and dungeon encounters are generally more involved. Like, for instance, you can't make as many mistakes in a dungeon. The combat is more involved in that respect. Outside, you can just run away. You can't do that. You cannot switch off in the middle of a dungeon. You've got to focus. You've got to work with your teammates, and playing with friends, of course, makes everything more enjoyable. That we will not dispute. Now, I think actually Wrath of the Lich King really fell over in this regard. Because I'll tell you what, how many quests did you see that involved going into raid instances? So few. So criminally few. I mean, it doesn't tie it in with the story. I mean, Naxxramas is a prime example. You see this on the forums all the time. Where are the quests that get you into Naxxramas? Look at the massive quest hub that was in Light's Hope Chapel. Look at it. Look at all of the quests and the world event that led up to Naxxramas. Look at how it tied it all together with the storyline. Look at how it made it worthwhile to go in there again and again and again, not only for loot but for questing too. From a storyline perspective, from an immersion perspective. It was worth it. It's exactly the same thing that happens with the 5-man instances. You have the quest to get you in there, and it makes it more involved, and it makes the leveling seem just that little bit more interesting. And yet, they forgot that. There's nothing. Nothing for Sartharian, nothing for Naxxramas, nothing for Ulduar. Is there going to be anything for the Crusaders Colosseum? Heck if I know. But that's not a good start. Your 2 big pieces of raid content for the first, let's see, what would that be? 8-9 months of the expansion. You got no quest, no reason to go there other than this is endgame content, go do it. And that ain't involved. Not in the slightest possible way. Whereas DDO content, yeah, those dungeons are involved. You get in there for a specific purpose. The dungeon crawling is there for a reason. And indeed, that is all you do most of the time. And I'm fine with that, because I love dungeons. Do the rest of you love dungeons? I would imagine that you do. I would imagine you love dungeons. How could you not? They're the best things about WoW. They're always well designed. They're always involved. The boss fights are always creative. The set pieces are, generally speaking, very, very good. Wrath's dungeons were no exception. A lot of very good dungeons with Wrath. No question about that. Now, with Wrath going the way of, hey, we can make quests more interesting, it does make me worry a little bit that they will design less dungeons for the new expansion. I hope they don't. In fact, I hope they take a long, hard look at DDO and the way that Guild Wars works and actually realize that instance content is a good idea. Yep, WoW came up with instance content for a very specific purpose, and yet doesn't use it anywhere near as much as you might imagine. Here's a tip. Generally speaking, the people I want to play with are the people in my group, in my guild. They're my friends, yeah? Those are the people I want to play with. Now, if I can play with them in my own little private instance, I am way happier than having to compete with 100 other guys for the drop, or whatever reason. Now, you might say, oh, well, that takes away from, well, PvP. Well, PvP's been dead for years. Don't even get me started on that. Now, maybe the new expansion will introduce a brand new way of world PvPing, but somehow I doubt it. It's a sad commentary on the state of the WoW player base at the moment that I would rather be in an instance away from them than playing with them. But that's the way it is. WoW has a lot of very bad players, a lot of very obnoxious players, people that I do not want to interact with on a social basis. What I do want to do is interact with my friends and my guildies, my colleagues as it were. I want to be involved in something that is genuinely challenging all the time. That is how I want to level. And that is why I am enthralled by DDO. That is why I will most likely play DDO alongside playing WoW when I come back to do my 10-man stuff. But to me, the fact that DDO has grabbed me on the leveling scale really does speak volumes. And it does have a lot of lessons to teach. Those quests are just so more involved. They really are. Yes, some of the content is repetitive. There isn't enough content to do everything only once and get to the level you want to do. But you know what? I did strat 10 times and... sorry, 10 times. But try 100! How many times have I done strats? So many. If I've done strats, say, 10 times, and I enjoyed it all 9 of the 10, then it was worthwhile. If I have to do everything in DDO 4 times, but it's fun every time, then I'm fine with that. Better than going to collect 20 more bear asses, I would rather be in a dungeon dodging traps, fighting monsters, getting loot, opening chests, investigating, looking for hidden doors, passages, using skills, working with my teammates. That's what MMO gameplay is all about. Teamwork, team play. Let's see some more. Seriously. My name is Total Biscuit, you're listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio. I'll be right back with the illusion of choice. Assuming I'm not dead by the end of this music break. And yes, I do have a special song for you coming up at the end. Oh dear, an abomination. I'll be right back after this, folks. Enjoy.